Now, I'm not much of a VR aficionado, okay? I dabble in VR every now and then, but I wouldn't go as far as to say I'm an expert or anything. But I must say, Assassin's Creed Nexus is the most fun I've had playing a VR game in quite a while.
What in fuck's name are you doing?
Now, you guys know me, right? I'm pretty biased towards Assassin's Creed. I made an entire Lord video on it. But, I gotta tell you, man, this game, I love this game. This game made me knock the dust off the Zuck
Mark,
box.
give me the Zuck.
I haven't touched this thing since Bone Lab came out. Not only that, but it made it stay in the rotation of consoles for a good couple of months. To put it frankly, Assassin's Creed Nexus is exactly what I wanted in an Assassin's Creed VR game. It's a match made in heaven. You know, it's not without its bugs. It has quite a bit of VR jank with it, but LARPing around as Ezio and Venice more than makes up for it. Now, before we go any further, I'm just going to be completely honest. I'm not really going to talk about the story that much. One, because I didn't find it very interesting, and two, I just didn't care about it or watch very much of it.
Discovered that Rizzo just installed a brand new
Shut the fuck up, bro.
I mean, guys, let's be honest here. There's like 14 games in the Assassin's Creed franchise, just chock full of lore. Full mainline games, by the way. I'm pretty sure a VR spin-off is not going to have the same amount of lore that the mainline games are. I skipped most of the cutscenes, and I'm not ashamed of it one bit. Okay, so if you're looking for like a story breakdown, this isn't it. I'm going to be reviewing mostly the gameplay, the AI, things like that. Now, what I can say is that you play as 3 different protagonists. You play as Ezio, Cassandra, and Connor. Bouncing between the 3 protagonists is very well paced in my opinion. Once you start getting tired of playing as one assassin, the game switches to the other assassin, it switches the locale, and it kind of just keeps the gameplay fresh. You know, you'll play as Ezio for about 45 minutes to an hour, then you'll switch over to Cassandra, then you get to play in Athens and use a bow and arrow. The game is very well paced in that way with switching the protagonist, and I really appreciated that. Now, with the nature of it being a level-based game, it's not exactly open world. There's an open area in every level, and there's little activities and collectibles to do on the map, but there's no giant open world map to explore, and honestly, that's okay. I understand why this decision was made. One, because it made sense within the confines of the story. VR isn't the most technically stable hardware in the world. And quite frankly, I think it would just be a little too overwhelming to have an entire map. So just keeping it, level based with little open areas, I think that benefited the game greatly. They're not too big where it takes hours to explore all of them, but they're not too small to where you feel like you can't explore anything. They're perfectly little bite-sized maps. It's really cool to experience these little Assassin's Creed maps and little dribs and drabs in VR. It makes for a completely different experience. When you're going around these little maps and you're exploring, this is where the game really shines, and it's parkour. As we all know, Assassin's Creed was founded on its parkour, and while the mainline games kind of abandoned the structure of what made the parkour good, this game more than makes up for it. I can't express how fun it is to just jump from Boston rooftop to Boston rooftop and just free run around the city. It's just hours of fun. Ubisoft captured the magic of the old school parkour in Assassin's Creed. It truly makes you feel like you're an assassin going through the city. Methodically placing your hand from one ledge to the other, trying to find the quickest way up, sprinting across rooftops, jumping across rooftops, diving into haystacks. Like it's all there, man. I noticed that a lot of parkour in VR, they have a hard time making you feel like you're actually good at it. It's kind of janky. The ledge hopping doesn't really work very well. Sometimes when you try and get up on a ledge, it doesn't register. Looking at you, Boneworks. But this game does a very good job of making you feel like you're actually good at parkour. You actually feel like Ezio running around Venice or Connor running around New York City. A lot of the reason why the parkour works so well is because it uses kind of a snap-on system to kind of guide you through the parkour and keep you away from making errors. Like, for example, there is a jump button in the game, but the jump button is very hand-holdy. And what I mean by that is when you jump, right, the game is going to guide the player to where you think you're going to go. But it's not a bad thing whatsoever. In fact, it's one of the main reasons why the parkour works so well. When you're free running up a pile of boxes, the game is going to make you jump to where you need to jump, so that way you don't lose your momentum by slamming into a wall or something. Or if you're jumping from roof to roof or something like that, the game is going to snap you to the nearest ledge, so that way you don't overjump and you fucking fall to your death. The game still lets you free run it any way you want. Like, it's complete freedom with the parkour, but this snap-on jumping system allows you to keep the pace that you're running at without having to worry about losing your momentum from player error or bad physics or something like that. It really found a way to absolve a problem that I personally have a lot when playing VR parkour games. Now, it still has some jank. It's a VR game. Obviously, it's not going to be 100% perfect. I've been burned a couple of times where I've jumped onto the wrong ledge. There's been times where no matter what, I couldn't hop on top of a ledge and I would just keep falling and I have no idea why. But the good definitely outweighs the bad. There is a really irritating mechanic in the game though, where if you're facing a wall, you're too close to the wall, the game will just go black. And it's not a glitch or anything because it happens every time you go up to a wall. It might just be like a motion sickness, VR comfort thing, but I found that it kind of hindered my experience more than once when playing the game. There will be times where I'm trying to tail someone and I'll be up close to a wall and then I'll look at the wall and it'll just turn black and I'll have to, look away to reorient myself. It's super disorienting. But other than that, in the occasional hand misplacement, it's janky, but it's a super fun parkour system. Aside from the story, there's really not a lot to do in these little mini maps. Like I was saying, there's collectibles and little side thingies. But like I said, man, the main draw is just being in these little cities and being able to climb and fight to your heart's content. What this game lacks in side content, it really makes up for with honing in on its core mechanics. And honestly, I'm kind of proud of Ubisoft for doing that. They realize that this game, what people want from this game is the core, climbing, stealthing, and fighting, right? There's no like thousands of map markers or millions of side quests to do and things like that. It's a lean experience that makes you an assassin. And I really appreciate it for that. I was experiencing a bit of frame ticking issues. I was experiencing a lot of artifacting issues. And that could just be my hardware. I was playing on the Quest 2, which is a little bit outdated at this point. But that was a little bit of things I noticed. So if you have a Quest 2, that's something to look out for. But it's nothing to the degree where it makes the game unplayable. Now let's get into the combat. As I started to play the game more, I started to like the combat a lot more. The game really takes its time slowly dipping your toes into the combat. The tutorials are asinine in how long they are when you first start playing the game, but it's honestly pretty enjoyable and I find it quite challenging at times. You can't take very many hits, so parrying and dodging is extremely important here. The mechanics are very cut and dry. You can dodge or parry incoming strikes and there are light or heavy enemies where those defensive moves come in handy. But much like everything with this game, it's a lean system, but it works really great. It's simple, but in VR, it makes you sweat. When you're surrounded by like 4 or 5 enemies, it may seem like it's pretty easy at first, but when you're actually in the moment, you're having to concentrate on who's going to strike first, who's about to shoot your bow, and the satisfaction of taking down those 5 or 6 guards that you were sword fighting with, it's pretty rewarding in that regard. It's not impossible to master, but there is definitely a learning curve to it. Now the parrying was just fine, but I found the dodging extremely bad. I did not dodge pretty much ever when I didn't have to. There's no set dodge button or anything. You kind of just move your player slightly to the left or the right, and it's kind of anticlimactic because you walk so slowly in the game that dodging doesn't really feel cool. Like it just feels like you're kind of walking out of the way, you know what I mean? So it's no big deal. It's just a nitpick, really.
We do a little trolling.
Now the sword fighting is it's pretty great in my opinion. You can kind of just do like a little bit of waggle. The velocity of your strikes doesn't really affect how much damage you give to the enemies, but it's super cool how you can have a sword in one hand and your hidden blade in the other, and you can parry a strike and then hit them with the assassin dash with your hidden blade. It makes you feel pretty badass, and I found myself spamming the hidden blade dash like a lot. Like as soon as I would parry someone, I would do the hidden blade dash because it's a super OP move. Overall, the combat is pretty fun, but it is a little challenging. But that's where the focus of stealth combat comes in, and then the game really starts to shine. Things like air assassinations, throwing knives, crossbows, smoke bombs, things like that really encourage you to get out there and do missions as stealthily as possible. Assassin's Creed Nexus really shines when you can be able to, parkour around a map, air assassinate an enemy, and then take the next enemy out with a bow and arrow without anyone knowing. This is where the true feeling of being an assassin comes through. I remember specifically there's a mission where you play as Connor and you're trying to get to a boat, right? And you have to kind of like sneak through the pier, freeing captives and taking out guards silently. The feeling of just stealthing every enemy and being able to sneak around really is just unmatched in VR, you know what I mean? The satisfaction of doing that perfect stealth run, that feeling is second to none. It's just ripped straight out of old school Assassin's Creed. You did all this in Assassin's Creed 3, and now you get to experience it firsthand in Assassin's Creed Nexus. I really appreciate this game's design and how it's tied to the series roots. Now I did notice when I was in open combat, the enemy AI was a little dumb. Sometimes I notice if you're not on a completely even field, they'll immediately just take out their bow and arrow and strike, even if you're only like 3 stairs below them or something. I also noticed that they would cancel a lot of their attacks for some reason. It kind of does that old school Assassin's Creed thing too, where only one enemy strikes at a time, and they all just kind of circle you and take their turns. So the AI is a little dumb in that regard. Like I said, the typical VR jank, but nothing that's super game breaking, nothing that won't hinder your experience at all. Overall, I think Assassin's Creed Nexus is a really good VR game. I honestly honestly wasn't really expecting much going into this. I thought it was just going to be kind of one of those VR peripheral spin-offs where it's only 2 hours long. But no, this team really showed out and really gave us a full-fledged VR game, and they showed how well Assassin's Creed can work in VR. Now, I don't think it's a system seller by any stretch of the imagination, right? I wouldn't say, go out and buy a Quest just for this game. But for the $40 price tag, it is 100% absolutely worth it. There's a ton of accessibility and, VR comfort options. If you get motion sickness, if you're afraid of heights, anything like that, the game really caters to you. Anyone from a beginner in VR to a pro in VR can play this game and have fun. I'm not really one to get motion sickness. I do play a good number of VR games, so I play it in completely immersive mode and I haven't had any issues at all. It is definitely a game you will not regret having in your VR library. I hope we get a sequel at some point. I think this team definitely showed that we can get an Assassin's Creed VR game every couple years or so. Maybe if you diversified the combat a little bit, even maybe ship combat, this game could work really well as a little mini franchise spin-off to Assassin's Creed. Yeah, I mean that's about all I got for this game. It's a very good entry into the series. I highly recommend it. If you do have the hardware, definitely buy this game. If you want me to keep doing just little casual reviews like this, just be sure to let me know. Without further ado, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.